You are welcome to this lesson. Today, you are going to learn how to answer WAEC questions on synonyms and antonyms, which are forms of analogies. I am Rumeso Adeyemo with the brand name English with RMG. And this video is proudly brought to you by IOTA Virtual Learning Platform. In this video, you are going to learn all you need to know for you to excel in answering any question on synonyms and antonyms in your YSSE so that you can get the best and excel in your YSSE examination. So, are you ready to learn with me today? Get your writing materials and let's begin. So, first, what is an analogy? Yes, I'm going to begin with this because both synonyms and antonyms are forms of analogy. So let's learn that first so that we can understand the background behind these questions. So, an analogy is a figure of speech that compares two words or phrases to highlight their relationship or similarities. That is, analogies helps to compare two things, two words or phrases in order for us to have better understanding of the relationship between these two words or phrases. So, how does analogy do this? So, analogies usually show a relationship by pointing out that A is to B as C is to D. So, this is the normal format for analogy. Do you understand? It will usually point out that A is to B as C is to what? D. So let's consider a few examples. We have a teacher is to students as a doctor is to patients. So here, analogy is helping us to show some kind of functional relationship. Just like teachers have to deal with students, doctors also have to deal with what? Patients. Do you understand? So if you are trying to explain some concept to someone, perhaps the person don't understand what patients are or who patients are, but they know what students and teachers are. So you can just tell them patient is to doctor just as student is to teacher. So this will enable the person to have better understanding of what you're talking about. Do you understand? So for another example is painter is to brush as writer is to what? Pen. So this is a form of tool analogy, just telling us that just as how painters use brush, writer also use what? Pen. Do you understand? So when we make analogy, it helps us to give better clarification about whatever it is that we are saying, and it helps the person that we are also saying it to have better understanding of what we have said. Do you understand? Don't worry, we are still going to show you how these have any relationship with your synonym and antonym questions. So let's consider another example. So we have full is to empty as rich is to poor. So here, when we say something is full, empty, rich, poor, obviously this is words and opposite. Do you understand? So that means that analogy can also help us to show relationship between two opposite words or two opposite concepts. It is not every time that when you create an analogy, it must be between similar concepts, just like we have in the first two examples. Do you understand? It could also be in form of what? Opposite, depending on the context or what we are trying to say. Do you understand? So instead of just saying food is the opposite of empty and rich is the opposite of poor, I can just say full is to empty because I'm trying to explain as rich is to poor. So another example is clean is to dirty as organized is to what? Cluttered. That's if a place is not dirty, then it is what? Clean, because I'm trying to make an opposite analogy. Do you understand? So now let's move on to how is analogy relevant to answering your YSSE questions on synonyms and antonyms. I said it earlier that synonyms and antonyms are forms of what? Analogies, just as you've seen it in the examples given previously. So now let's get practical. Let's solve questions from your YSSE past questions on synonyms and antonyms. And let me explain to you how you really need the understanding of analogy for you to get it right. So here we have question 1 from section 1 WAEC 2021, and the instruction reads, in each of the sentences, there is one underlined word and one gap. From the list of the words lettered A to D, choose the one that is most nearly opposite in meaning to the underlined word, and that will at the same time correctly fill the gap. So that means, in a nutshell, all you need to do is read the question, pick the option that is most nearly opposite in meaning to the underlined words, and make sure that your option also fits into the context that have been provided in the question. So the instruction is very long. I'm not going to be putting it in all of the questions. So that's why I've given you the full instruction here. So subsequently, I'm just going to write nearly opposite in meaning on the questions. I hope you get it. So this is our first question. We have, while Mr. Ade is dash, his son is a novice. So from my explanation of analogy, it's just like saying novice is to what? Mr. Ade's son, while dash is to what? Mr. Ade. So when I'm trying to make a form of opposite analogy, what is the best word that can fit into that context? Do you understand the relationship between analogy and antonyms now? Like, it's just like saying that A is to B as B is to A. It could now be in form of synonyms or what? Antonyms. But from the instruction, we already know that for this question, we are dealing with what? Antonyms. So which word can make the best form of analogy in this context? Opposite analogy, remember. So let's consider the options. We have A, enlightened, B, competent, C, clever, D, experienced. So when someone is a novice, what does it mean? It means that the person is new at that thing. You have little or no knowledge. For example, maybe you are interested in learning a skill, probably how to make bags. The first day you go out to visit whatever it is that you want to learn, you are still a novice because you don't even know how to make these bags yet. So when someone is not a novice, does it mean that that person is enlightened? Opposite, most nearly opposite analogy. No, because when you're enlightened, it does not mean that you are no longer a novice. It does not mean that you are now a guru in that field. Do you understand? So B, competent, closer, but let's consider other options. C, clever. D, experienced. So I would say that our answer is what? Experienced, because the opposite of novice is what? When you are not new to something, then it means that you are what? Experienced. Competent is also close to it, but experience best suits this kind of analogy because it is an analogy between one thing and its what? Opposite. So it's either you're a novice or you're what? Experienced. Do you understand? So I know that the competence might want to look like, oh, it seems competent. No, that's why you need to be calm to look at all the options for you to pick which one best. And that is why they usually say most, not just it, but it has to be the what? Most suitable. Do you understand? So let's move on to the next question, which is question 1 from section 4, 2021. And here we are going to be looking at the nearest in meaning. So we have Obi's behavior is questionable. So I don't want to write all of the instruction because it's just too long. The main thing you need to understand here that we want to pick the nearest in meaning. So we have Obi's behavior is what? Questionable. So what does it mean for something to be questionable? It means that it is not trustworthy. It is shady. We need to ask more questions before we can really accept this thing. So what is it that I can say to mean the same thing in such a way that I can say A is to B as B is to A in the form of what? Synonyms now, not antonyms. Please don't mix it up. So we have A, disputable, B, worrisome, C, dubious, D, refutable. So we use disputable in context of, okay, maybe you are trying to give us a fact or a concept, and then we say, oh, this is disputable. That is what you have just said now is disputable. That is, I can have other facts to refute it. Worrisome does not mean that something is questionable. It means that it's disturbing. Do you understand? Refutable means same thing just as disputable. But when we say something is dubious or someone is dubious, it also means that their character is what? Questionable. So let's assume that Obi's behavior is the same as that of his dad. And I want to create an analogy. I'm going to say that Obi Obi's behavior is to questionable, just as his father's behavior is to what? Dubious. Dubious can fit into that kind of analogy of me saying that they have the same attitude. Do you understand? Than any other words in the options. So that's why you need to understand what analogy is. It will help you to pick the word that most fit into that context. I hope you understand my explanation. Please, if it is not clear, you can put your concerns or whatever it is that is not clear in the comment section, and I'll be glad to answer your question. Are you following? So our answer will be what? Our answer will be C, dubious. Obese behavior is what? Questionable. Or obese behavior is what? Dubious. Or if I'm trying to put it in form of an analogy, obese behavior is questionable, just as his friend's behavior is as well dubious. Now let's move on to solving past questions on what? Antonyms. Antonyms. I only made the previous one as an example, both antonym and synonyms. Here we are going to solve antonyms in a row. So we have question 2 from section 1, 2021 WAEC. So we have, it is better to use persuasion rather than dash to get witnesses to court. So now we are trying to look out for most nearly opposite to what? Persuasion, such that if I say A is to B as B is to as C is to D, the word that I'm going to be using is going to oppose what? Persuasion. Do you understand? So now let's consider the words in the options for us to see which one can best fit into this context. So we have A, effort, B, coercion, C, influence, D, pressure. So what does effort mean? Effort means to try to do something. That does not oppose persuasion. If I'm trying to make an analogy, I can say that the opposite of persuasion is effort. No. Coercion, probably. Influence is like, okay, I'm trying to say things to people or live my life in a kind of way. I'm not going to force them and I'm not going to persuade them. If they like, they can do it. If they don't like, they can leave it. Do you understand? So that does not also oppose persuasion. Pressure is like forcing someone in this context rather than pressure to get witnesses. No, it does not really fit into that context. Do you understand? So the best word that fits into the context is what? Coercion. Because coercion means force, like to force someone to do something. Do you understand? So noun, noun. We cannot say rather than pressure to get witnesses to court. No. So our answer is what? B. Our answer is B, coercion. It is better to use persuasion rather than coercion to get witnesses to court. Are you following? I hope you are enjoying this lesson as much as I am enjoying it as well. And I hope this is actually helping you to get more clarity and more insight into answering your YSSE questions perfectly. Now let's move on to the next question, which is question 1, section 1, WAEC 2020. Don't forget that we are still on most nearly opposite in meaning. So we have, a guest should not make derogatory remarks about what is offered by his host, but dash statements. It is still a form of analogy. Do you understand? So if it is not derogatory, if a remark is not derogatory, what is it going to be? In form of its opposite. Do you understand? Not synonyms, opposite. If it is not derogatory, then what is it going to be? So let's assume you visited your friend and she hosted you, provided you with some meal or snack, and you don't want to give a derogatory remark. That says you don't want to condemn whatever it is that she has given you. So what kind of remark are you going to give? Is it going to be A, candid, B, appealing, C, polite, D, complimentary? Candid means to be kind of factual. You can be candid and be derogatory. Do you understand? So, but B, appealing. Appealing is not often used in the context of remarks. No. C, polite. polite does not also fit into that context. Don't forget that when I read the instruction to the end initially, they said it must also what fit into the context. So D, complementary. So complementary is often used in form of what? Remarks. Polite is often used in the context of request. I made a polite request. But in context of remarks, it is either it is complimentary or it is what? Derogatory. Are you following? I hope you understand how I'm able to do my analysis in order for me to arrive at the perfect answer so that I don't get confused, regardless of how similar the answers could appear. So our answer is what? D, complementary. A guest should not make derogatory remarks about what is offered by his host, but complimentary statements. That is, say things that will show that you appreciate what has been done. Do you understand? Do not say things that would show that you do not appreciate whatever it is that has been done. Are you following? When you try to contextualize it most time and try to put it in form of an analogy, you will get the correct answer. So let's move on to the next question, which is question 4 from section 1, WAEC 2020. So we have John gave a fictitious account of the incident, but his son's account was dash. So here, our analogy is like saying fictitious is to John's account, just as what dash is to his son's account. But don't forget that it is not the same, it is not synonymous. We are dealing with antonyms here. Do you understand? So, what is going to be the opposite of fictitious? A, probable. B, compelling. C, factual. D, necessary. So when something is fictitious, it means that it is not real. It was cooked up. It is maybe a creative write up that is not real. Do you understand? So when you say something is probable, it does not directly opposite fictitious. B, compelling means it is what? Maybe engaging, exciting, interesting. Do you understand? That does not also oppose fictitious. Factual, yes, necessary does not oppose it as well. So when you say it's either an account or a story, it's fiction or non-fiction. You should be familiar with that concept. Fiction that is just creative, non-fiction, real, factual. It really happened. Do you understand? So John gave a fictitious account of the incident, but his son's account was factual. Do you understand? Now let's move on to the next question, which is question 1 from section 1, WAEC 2018. So we have Bintu's inquisitiveness is in sharp contrast with her sister's dash. So that means we are trying to say inquisitiveness is to Bintu as dash is to her sisters in opposition, not synonymous. Do you understand? So when someone is not inquisitive, what would that person be? What does it even mean to be inquisitive? To be inquisitive means to be curious. When you see something, you want to ask questions about it. How is it done? What is behind it? How do you come about this? You are always curious. Do you understand? So, what's the opposite of this? A, indifference. B, noisiness. Noisiness, I would even say noisiness is synonymous to inquisitiveness, and we are looking out for the opposite. C, calmness. Yeah, because if you are calmness could be a probable answer, but they said most nearly opposite. So let's continue to look for our option. D, dullness. No. Because when you are not inquisitive, it does not mean that you are going to be dull. It does not mean that you won't be smart. It just means that you won't ask too much questions all the time. Do you understand? So A, indifference. Indifference means you don't care. You might see something new, you might even appreciate it in your mind, but you won't care. You won't even ask any questions about it. Do you understand? So the most suitable, most nearly opposite is what? Indifference. So when you are trying to make an analogy, you can say inquisitiveness is to Bintu, while indifference is to a sister. Because a sister does not really care. She's not too curious about things. Do you understand? Calmness is also close, but it is not suitable for the analogy. Do you understand? When someone is calm, in fact, someone could be calm and ask questions sometimes. Do you understand? But indifference is apt. It says it well. It says it all that, okay, you just don't really care much. about things, so you won't ask too much questions about it. Do you understand? So that's why our answer is what? A, indifference. So the sentence will read, Bintu's inquisitiveness is in sharp contrast with her sister's what? Indifference. I hope you are getting how I'm able to analyze and pick my correct answer. So let's move on to our next question from still WAEC 2018. So we have, after grasping the fundamental aspects of his job, Kwesi had to cope with more dash procedures. So when something is not fundamental, what is it going to be? When you say fundamental, we are saying the basis. Do you understand? The beginning, just like saying the primary aspect. If you don't go through primary school, it might be difficult to go to secondary school. Do you understand? So when we say fundamental, the beginning, the basis of something, just like maybe when you learn a new topic, your teacher is going to start with introduction to so so so. So that introduction will help you to get better understanding of other parts of it. So that introduction is what we call fundamental. So what is going to be the opposite of fundamental now? A, advanced. B, academic. C, subsidiary. D, secondary. So when something is not fundamental, it's going to be what? Advanced, especially in this context. After grasping the fundamental aspects of his job, Kwesi had to cope with more advanced procedures. Do you understand? So our answer is what? A, advanced. Because when you move from the beginning, the simpler one, then you move on to the what? To the advanced level. Now we are going to move on to answering questions on synonyms from your past question. However, I do not want this video to be too long so that it doesn't bore you. So I'm going to link the video on synonyms in the description below. Kindly go there to watch so that you can get the best out of your YSSE question and you can understand how to answer questions on synonyms better as well. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Thank you for joining this lesson, and I wish you all the best in your examination. And please share with your friends who are also writing this examination. Let them benefit as well. Thank you.